Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And hi from Palestine. Hello. Today, I will make like a presentation focusing on the very difficult situation of agriculture and water under Area C. And Area C is the area that is fully controlled by the Israeli occupation. And before starting on that, I would like to give like a small background information by highlighting that the international law and General Assembly of the United Nations guarantee and affirm the right of Palestinians to sovereignty over their land and the use of their natural resources. However, the Israeli occupation's policies, especially the policy of administrative and military divisions and the policy of settlements expansion, continue to threaten Palestinians' existence and the lives of the population in all these areas, especially the Area C, which is rich in its natural resources and its fertile agricultural areas, which is key for Palestinian economic development. However, Israel controls all aspects of life and impedes any urban agriculture or economic development in those areas, leading towards the shrinkage of agricultural sector. Historically, the agricultural sector in Palestine constituted a major component of the Palestinian economy, but due to the policies of the Israeli occupation, it took sharp gradual decline, where in the 70s, for example, agricultural sector constituted about 37% of Palestinian gross domestic product, GDP. In 1994, it was around 13%, it was declined, and the decline continued until 2019, reaching only to 7%. Now in 2021, we're talking about less than 4% where the agriculture contribute to the GDP. The reason for this is attributed to confiscation of land, construction of settlements, and the so-called outposts, water scarcity, and the construction of the apartheid wall. Since occupying Palestine or West Bank in 1967, Israel has misappropriated more than 2 million dunams of lands, which equals 200,000 hectares throughout the West Bank area. Israel now uses this land for its own purposes, including building new settlements, expanding the territory they control, including farmland and industrial zone, and paving roads that mainly serve the Israeli settlers population. It is worth noting that 91% of the agricultural land is located in the West Bank, and the rest 9% is in the Gaza Strip. 62% of this land in West Bank is located in Area C, which is controlled by the Israeli occupation. This area will decrease according to the Israeli annexation plan, which is considered catastrophic for the agricultural sector, as 34% of the area of the West Bank will be annexed by the Israeli government, which constitutes 411 square kilometers. In addition, it will include 425 Palestinian communities that mainly depend on agriculture. Now, this is not the only catastrophe Palestinians are facing in terms of shrinking of agriculture and shrinking of land and annexation of land, but also there is annexation of water resources and control over water resources. Since the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories in 1967, the occupation authorities have controlled the surface and the groundwater resources. Oslo Accord states in its Annex number 3, in clause number 1 of the agreement, the need for cooperation in the field of water and its development by experts from both sides, including proposals for studies and plans on water rights for each party, as well as the equitable use of shared water resources during and after the transitional period of the Oslo Agreement. In the second Oslo Agreement came in order to give Palestinians their water rights, as the occupation government recognized the Palestinian water rights in the West Bank according to that agreement, where these rights are to be discussed in the final negotiations and will be established in the permanent agreement relating to the various water resources. And in that agreement, it states that, and I'm quoting here, Israel recognizes the rights of Palestinians to water in the West Bank. And the Israeli side recognizes that the real needs of Palestinian people for water for domestic purposes are from 70 to 80 million cubic meters annually, and increasing water quota allocated to Palestinians during the transitional period up to 26.6 million cubic meter every year, annually. But the solution for the water problem, unfortunately, has been remained and postponed to the final status of negotiations. What's happening now? That agreement and what was stipulated in the Oslo agreement was never implemented on the ground. Israel now has the full control over the water and the land resources in Palestine. Most of the resources required for agriculture and farming practices in Palestine are located in Area C. However, access to land and water in Area C is completely restricted by the Israeli occupation for the benefit of settlers. The aim of this control is to evacuate land from farmers and leave land easy hunt for confiscation and annexation. It's important to know that it is impossible for Palestinian economy to recover without developing Area C and providing Palestinians with full access to the Jordan River and the Dead Sea, as Palestine is deprived of 265 million cubic meters of water from Jordan River and 40 kilometers from the shores of the Dead Sea. According to the World Bank study, although it was old since 2014, Israeli companies earn about $3 billion annually from selling Dead Sea minerals and other products derived from Dead Sea mineral productions. The continued control of Israeli occupation over Palestinian resources have catastrophic effects on the Palestinian economy. First, a report prepared by UNCTAD, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, revealed that the cost of Israeli occupation to the Palestinian people between 2000 and 2017 is estimated at $47.7 billion. Look how huge the loss in the economy due to the occupation of Area C and the natural resources there, which is 3 times the size of the national economy for 2017. And according to UNCTAD also report submitted to the United Nations General Assembly, they say in that report, the World Bank, losses are still rising. Yani in 2021, the losses reached up to $50 billion as losses from as economic losses due to the occupation and the occupying of our resources. The complete control of the occupation over water resources, confiscation of agricultural lands, and obstruction of farmers' access to their lands to cultivate or graze had a direct negative impact on agricultural growth. This has prompted Palestinians to stop working in agriculture, unfortunately. The lack of water, especially through water networks, led to the purchase of water using tanks or purchasing water from Israel, leading to a rise in the cost of living and in the cost of agricultural production, so that agricultural production became non-competitive with the Israeli products through the support provided by the Israeli occupation to settlers, especially in water and agricultural products. Area C is considered key to Palestinian economic development, and because of Palestinian inability to access Area C, the gross domestic product loses $2.2 billion annually, and the revenue on the treasury of the national budget was reported as a loss of $918 million annually.
Sorry, Abbas, I'm just sharing a map of Area C because some people have requested it. So I hope this is an appropriate one. But I've just
the red parts are Area C, by the way. For those who are seeing the map, All these red areas are Area C, and you can imagine and see how large is Area C. Leaving the Palestinian communities, the white areas, Area A and B, the white areas, as small cantons, small islands, disconnected from each other, and like swimming in a sea of Area C under the full control of the Israelis. So there is no possibility for any viable Palestinian state to be established without having, control on Area C. Area C is the storage, the historical, the strategic storage for food security, for agriculture, and for natural resources.
Great. I just wanted to share that while we were talking about Area C.
Yes, please.
Over to you again.
So what we just another thing to add about Area C is that Area C and the Jordan Valley contain more than 90% of the Palestinian natural resources and wealth. But the greed of the occupation to exploit these resources deprived Palestinians from their own natural resources. This what the World Bank said in the study that was published in 2014. Having said so far, this shows that an annexation is really happening on the ground. Although you have maybe heard the Israeli government announcing that they will postpone the annexation. What happened actually is that the occupation postponed an official announcement of annexation, while on the ground, the annexation is happening. This annexation is accompanied with increasing settler violence and attacks against Palestinian farmers. The settler violence, by the way, has been increasingly intensified over the past 3 years. The situation in settlements expansion will lead to the seizure of Palestinian citizen properties, violation of their rights, escalation of settler violence. In September 2021 only, in 1 month, settlers killed 3 Palestinians, injured 127 Palestinians, uprooted more than 8,000 trees, and property and cars were vandalized. In addition to 774 residential and economic facilities that were destroyed, 184 of which were funded by donors, in addition to 959 Palestinian citizens who were displaced and prevented from returning to their homes in Tubas area. And here I'm talking about Humsa and Bithea area in Tubas area. All of this is considered as a violation of international laws and the 4th Geneva Convention. This is according to OCHA. The question here, ladies and gentlemen, what should be done? I mean, this is catastrophic. This is really catastrophic. Settler violence, protected by the Israeli army, are attacking Palestinian farmers on a daily basis in their farmland, kicking them out of their grazing areas, preventing them from entering their farmlands or cultivating their lands, denying their right to access to their land and natural resources, and all of which is aiming at emptying farmlands from farmers in order for the Israeli settlers to annex, confiscate, and make full control of that land. All this happened, unfortunately, and the whole world is watching. What they're doing, unfortunately, here is they either issue a letter of condemnation or a letter of concern. And to be frank with you, Israel, as an occupying power, have been coped with these letter of concerns, letter of condemnation from the international community. And if you go and visit the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Israel, and you look at the archive, you will find piles of letter of concerns and piles of letter of condemnation against settlement expansion, annexation plans, and the violations against Palestinians. But Israel, have coped with that, doing nothing. And there is no price Israeli occupation is paying for being occupiers. And settlers have never been held accountable by the international community in order to stop them of being settlers. Actually, the silent policy, or this policy of just concern and condemnation, indirectly encouraged the settlers to expand and to continue controlling the Palestinian farmlands and agricultural areas in Area C. I think this is the time to stop talking, but start doing. The international community needs to shift from the level of condemnation to the level of taking actions against Israeli occupation without holding Israel accountable and without having settlers paying the price of being settlers. The violence against Palestinians will continue. Israel have succeeded to establish an apartheid system in Palestine, exactly like what Amnesty report for this year had described Israel as a country of apartheid. This is an apartheid regime worse than the one the whole world witnessed in South Africa, and that apartheid regime in South Africa was only toppled down by solidarity, boycott, and actions against the apartheid regime in that area. And I think without taking actions and holding occupation accountable, this apartheid regime will continue and the suffering of Palestinians will continue. I try to be brief with all these information being intensive like this to leave wider window and to give you an opportunity for any questions and answers. Thanks for being patient following my presentation.
Thank you so much for that, Abbas. We've had some comments in the chat box about how much useful information there is there. I will be, for those of you who've asked, the recording, audio and video recording of all of our webinars go up the same day as the actual webinar, so that will be available within a couple of hours. The transcript takes a little bit longer, but they go up normally a few days, hopefully by Monday in this case. So if you do want to have all of the facts and figures that have been presented by Abbas today, that will be on the website in the past events section, hopefully by Monday. So, so don't worry, if you miss parts of it, you'll be able to follow on the transcript or the recording soon. Abbas, we've got lots of questions. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat box. I should say that Abbas is not looking at the chat box, but I'm monitoring it and I will be sending it to him afterwards, so he'll see any questions that have been missed or any of your comments. So, but yes, do please type any questions that you have. I am going to start with, I mean, some of your figures that you gave us, the decrease, from what I understood, it was more than 30% down to less than 4%, the agricultural industry.
Yeah, from 37% to less than 4%.
I mean, it's heartbreaking, isn't it? And the fact that people are choosing to avoid that industry now because it's just too difficult. We've got a really good question that's come in from Kirsten. Sorry, just bear with me while I get this question up. From Kirsten Dahlberg. Do you have any facts about climate change and the climate effects on the occupation? Sorry, any facts about climate effects of the occupation on Palestinian agriculture? Let's take that to mean about climate change on agriculture, compounded by the occupation as well.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you know, climate change issue here in Palestine is a big issue where Palestinians are paying the price of those who destroying, you know, and causing the climate change negative impacts. You know, all these, you know, factories, chemical factories in Israel, for example, that are established on the border of West Bank, like the ones in Tulkarem, Gishuri, and you know, those two chemical factories, although the court have decided that these factories are poisonous and they're killing, but still they're still established there. And the decision of that court stated that the negative impact of these factories are only hurting Palestinians, but not Israelis from the west side of these factories. That's why they kept these factories there. Anyways, you know, due to the control of Israeli on water resources and the climate change and the implication of the climate change on the water scarcity had made it difficult for Palestinians to get water to irrigate their agricultural projects. You know, we have water scarcity because water is under the control of the Israeli occupation. Adding to that, there is droughtness that is expanding, less water, annual water rain from winter rain due to climate change. And this affecting the Palestinians from getting sufficient water, not only for irrigation, but even for drinking. So adaptability techniques are really challenging for Palestinians to encounter these, you know, severe and difficult and hard implications of the climate change. What we try to do, yes, we're trying to make some models in order to adapt and to make our farmers adapt with the climate changes implications, like using some smart agriculture techniques that will minimize depending on water for irrigation, and that would increase the profitability and the productivity without the use of chemicals. Of course, this is challenging as long as we're having the occupation there and the water is controlled completely by them. We will continue to suffer and having no water to irrigate our agriculture production.
I've got a couple of questions about olive growing. Of the 4% or the less than 4% GDP that is now coming from agriculture, how much of that is from olive growing? That's a question from Jane McLone. And from Johanna Alberti, what is the impact of climate change on agriculture in the West Bank, particularly of olive growing?
Yeah. First, let's, as a matter of fact, the olive sector in Palestine is the largest agricultural sector in Palestine. More than 110,000 families are living entirely or partially on olive oil production and olive produce. Olive oil, I mean. It is the largest. The annual revenue of the olive sector in Palestine exceed $100 million a year. Not only that, the olive tree in Palestine is not just a tree that would have economic, revenue. It's symbolic for life, symbolic for hope, symbolic for peace, symbolic for, source of income, symbolic for everything. It's a strategic patriotic tree that people look at it with holy approach, not only as any other tree. It's a tree where they feel that their identity is there, that their life is there, that symbolizes their being Palestinians is in that tree. We have trees in Palestine that are 5,000 years old, like the one in Nuwareji in Bethlehem area. It's the oldest olive tree in the whole universe, at least known in the whole universe until now. So people, they deal with the olive tree exactly like what they deal with their children. That's why when Israel uproot one tree, they feel they are uprooting or killing one of their daughters or sons. It's very important. And the climate change here is very catastrophic because, for the past 2 years, unfortunately, usually during February and March month, these are very crucial months for the olive sector. If we have very good weather during these 2 months and very good climate to allow olive trees to give fruits, then we are in bad shape. For the past 2 years, and due to the climate change, in February and in March, we didn't have the appropriate climate for an environment for the fruits of olive season. And the fears now among all farmers and us as a union caring about small-scale farmers is that if this continue for the coming 2 to 3 years, Palestine might not be suitable even for olive trees, unfortunately. And that will be big catastrophes because the majority revenue of our GDP in agriculture is coming from the olive sector. Thank you.
Thanks for that. We've got so many questions coming in and they're all fantastic. So we're going to try to get through as many as we can, as always. There are 2 questions on the same theme. One from Sir Vincent Fien, who's the chair of the Balfour Project. So hello, Vincent. He says, thank you, Abbas, for your precise and shocking presentation. Agriculture is indeed vital to the Palestinian economy, both in Gaza and the West Bank. is it correct that Israel currently has more water than it needs and that it could afford to share water more equitably? And then from Donald Saunders, he says, I understand there's almost limitless availability even for swimming pools in the illegal settlements. How do Palestinians feel about this? So could the water be shared? Is there enough water for there to be a more equitable share? And how do Palestinians feel about this disproportionate division?
Let me say the following regarding water resources. By the way, Palestine do not suffer from scarcity of water. We have sufficient water resources that are sufficient for the coming 50 generations to come, not only 1 or 2 generations, even for the coming 50 generations. And these are scientific estimations. However, what we are lacking is access to our water resources due to the full control of the Israeli occupation and settlers over our water resources. That's why Israel is having more than they need in terms of water, because they're using our water resources for their drinking and irrigation purposes inside Israel. Yani most of their water inside Israel is coming from the water resources pumped from Jordan Valley in the eastern part of West Bank. So yes, they do have more than they need. That's why, for example, if you go and see a settlement in Jordan Valley with a Palestinian livestock farmer neighborhood next to that one, you can see the difference. Greenness, water available 24 hours in the settlements, swimming pools, washing cars, washing even streets, and even in summertime, they wash trees because of the more than they need water. While on the other side, just a few meters far from that settlement, Hadidi neighborhood, livestock farmer community in Jordan Valley, they don't have water for irrigation, they don't have water for their animals, they don't have even water for drinking purposes. Although the transitional pipeline of water that transport water to that settlement is going through Al-Hadidi neighborhood community. But the people there, Palestinians, are denied the right to use that pipeline for drinking or irrigation or for their animal irrigation, but settlers, they have it 24 hours. Adding to that, the cost of water settlers use is covered by the Israeli government. So, and it is perceived as an incentive for settlers in order to stay as settlers in Jordan Valley. And this is like an allowance for them to get because they pay no cost for water.
That's incredibly shocking.
The second part of the question, to be honest, what Palestinians feel, you can imagine. You can imagine looking at the water, being wasted here and there. They wash their cars every day. They wash their streets every day. They have swimming pools and everything, while people on the other side, they are, starving for a drop of water for their drinking or for the animal. And to compensate that, they are forced to buy water in tanks, which is like 30 shekels per 1 cubic meter. 30 shekels is almost $10, per 1 cubic meter. While settlers there, they consume the water at no cost.
Yeah, it's
catastrophic.
It's shocking, isn't it? We've got a question from Maggie Foyer. Is the large scale planting of grapes in the settlements making a significant impact on water usage?
Large scale plant of what?
Grapes.
Grapes. Make it what? Sorry.
So is the large scale planting of grapes in the settlements making a significant impact on water usage?
Not only grapes, they have dates also. Dates in Jericho, starting from Jericho to the northern slopes of the Jordan Valley, you have huge farm of palm farms there. They produce dates. And these dates, they require, huge amounts of water for irrigation. Adding to that, the grapes, dates, watermelon, different agricultural production. Since the water is available and at no cost, of course, you can produce everything in Jordan Valley. It's the most fertile soil. Whatever you cultivate there, you can get fruits out of. And since water is the highest and the most important resource you need for farming and cultivation, and It is available for free. Of course, they produce everything. That's why their prices
commercially, it's available.
Commercially, they are competitive. So when they sell their produce even outside, the country, outside Israel, the prices are competitive.
Yeah.
And so, they're so competitive in terms of, because they receive incentives from the Israeli occupation. By the way, most of settlers in West Bank are living there for business. Because of the tax exemption they get from their government, incentive package they receive, they have tax refund on any purchase they do. Second, they have what they call support for resilience. Can you imagine, Diana, everyone, sorry, can you imagine that settlers occupying lands of others, they receive support of resilience for them to continue being settlers in that area. 20% of their purchase is being paid back to them in a form of support of resilience in order to continue living there as settlers.
Which is just shocking.
It's the government that is encouraging settlement expansion.
When these settlements are deemed illegal by the international community, that's just it's shocking. I am going to ask another question from Kirsten because it's a really good one. Desalination, is that a way to solve the problem until the occupation is stopped? Because I know they have had different plans, haven't they, for desalination in the past?
What is it, Diana? The what? Sorry, I didn't understand that terminology.
Desalination.
Hello?
So desalination. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I hear you.
Okay,
but
good.
what was
desalination? So removing
again?
salt from the seawater or from the Dead Sea or from
somewhere we have no sea, we have no rivers, we have no access to any kind of desalination. Israel is doing desalination and they're using these for their own uses, but we don't have. Even in Gaza, which Gaza is expected in 2030 to be an area that is not suitable for a human being to live there because of no water. Although they have a sea, but they are unable to do these projects there. Because any equipment that need to go to Gaza have to be approved prior, has to get prior approval from the Israeli side. And Israel is using anything to squeeze the Gaza people there and not to allow any access of goods, except for some products that are coming from Israel. But apart from that, they do not allow free movement of goods and production in and outside Gaza. And we don't have access to the sea in Gaza as West Bankers. I mean, people living in West Bank, as you know. And oil water, seawater, and desalination projects, that would be, big projects run by the Israeli government and for the benefit of the citizens and settlers, to be honest. We don't benefit from that. But why to rely on such issue while, why we're looking for alternative solutions if we have the solution there? We have the water, it is available there. We have the water resources in our lands. But the water resource itself is controlled by the Israeli occupation. All what we need is to allow access of the Palestinians on their own natural resources. I'm not talking about natural resources that are in Israel. I'm talking about water resources that are in Jordan Valley, owned by Palestinians in their farmlands and should benefit them. But we're having no right to get access to these natural resources. Water resources.
Thank you for that. This is a question that maybe you can answer, but obviously you're not based in the UK, so maybe you can't, but I will ask it. From Nigel Walker, how can I identify horticultural or agricultural produce exported from Israel that are produced on confiscated land or the illegal settlements?
This is a very good question. And we have in BFU, I personally participated or did like 3 lobby tours in Europe, including UK, by the way, including London. I was in London in 2019, just a few months before COVID-19 was, outspoken. And there I met with the House of Commons, parliamentary members, and even with the Foreign Ministry. And I met with some solidarity movement. They're talking about how we can hold the settlers accountable by boycotting to purchase from their produce. And we try to pressure European countries to labelize a settler produce coming from settlements. But let me tell you something. Any dates, you know dates. In the market, there is no dates produced in Israel. All dates, 92% of the majul dates in Israel is coming from settlements, by the way. So it's like a brand. Even if they change the logo, if they write in Arabic, if they say produce in Israel, it's all from settlement. And second, I think now the European countries, according to the European Court, decision of the European Court, they started to labelize the produce coming from Israeli settlements. And your country can ask Israel to put the label on where that produce is coming from. And believe me, we don't need only to labelize the produce if it is coming from settlements or not. We need to prevent that produce from entering the European markets and UK markets. Because of your principles and laws, you say that you are with human rights, against occupation, and with solidarity of people being under occupation and so on, like what's happening in Ukraine now, you know, and people are showing solidarity with Ukrainian, saying that this is against the Russian occupation. The same is happening here. We have an occupation, and we are living under occupation. Our land, our produce, our life, our resources are all controlled and confiscated by occupation. And solidarity should not only be by words, it should be also by actions.
It's always been a conundrum to me how something can be deemed illegal, the settlements, yet we can still trade with them. It's baffling. You mentioned the Ukraine. So Farzana Sakir says, it's great to see the support given to the Ukraine by our government and other countries around the world. We all agree with that. It has also highlighted that the UK government think Palestinians don't deserve to be treated with respect, equality, and justice. Where is the outcry for the Palestinians like we have for the Ukraine? That's more of a comment rather than a question, but you've touched on it. So, oh, we've got, I should say, with the, sorry, we mentioned the dates. We've got Jane Scriven saying Zaytun dates and other produce is from Palestinian farmers. And we've actually got Heather Massoud from Zaytun who's joining us today. So for sure, if you want to find Palestinian produce, check out Zaytun. They're in a lot of Oxfam shops. They've got a website themselves. So we're big fans of Zaytun.
And if you don't find, ask us in BFU and we will secure olive oil for you in London. Don't worry, or wherever you are.
So it is possible to find Palestinian produce. You might have to do a little bit of digging, but it's worth it. The Zaytun products.
You have Yafa Limited company in UK that market agriculture produce from Palestine only, including the olive oil. You have Canaan, you have Al Ard also. All of these, you know, they work on processing of olive oil production, and they market in UK and in other European countries as well.
Fantastic. So we've got a question from Penny Wilcox. In the village of Zanuta in the South Hebron Hills in 2018, villagers told me of pollution from activities in the nearby industrial zone. This affects the fertility of the land and also caused a spike in cancer cases. I believe there is evidence of Israel moving hazardous industries from Israel into the West Bank from Israeli cities as it's less regulated in the West Bank. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes. Israel is using, that's why, you know, we said almost 60% of Palestinian land is classified as Area C. It's the largest area in Palestine. And given that this area is under the full control of the Israelis, they use it in different ways. One thing that using that land for is they use it as a garbage of their chemical waste. Like, for example, he mentioned south parts of Hebron. I can tell you about Ivna, one of the towns, well-known towns in Hebron area called Ivna. There's a big garbage area where Israel throw all the chemical waste and the chemical garbage in that area. Cancer ratio in Ivna have been recorded as the highest in the entire region due to chemical waste and the chemical garbage from the Israeli side. that usually they bury in the Palestinian land area. Of course, second, excessive use of chemicals for agriculture and the waste of chemicals they throw, among in different parts of Area C. They polluted the land and polluted the air, and even poisoned the people who are using and smelling that thing. Yes, this is correct, and it's happening. By the way, we have a research on that chemical use in Palestine. We can share it with you if you like, and we produce a documentary video called "Poisoned Soil," due to the chemical waste and use of the Israelis and the garbage they throw in Jordan Valley area, where the area became poisoned because of these chemical waste and chemical use from the Israeli side in settlements and in other areas. I can share that video with you and that research with you, and you can disseminate. It includes, reliable resources of information and so on.
Thank you, that'd be great. We will, any useful links like that, I will include on the page where we will put your recording and your transcript. So that'd be great, fantastic, thank you. We just had a comment from Vincent Fien again, Sir Vincent Fien, our chair, who says the Balfour Project agrees entirely with you that settlement products should not be permitted to be imported into the UK or the European Union. Settlements are illegal. So what they produce is illegal. Last May, the Balfour Project held a conference on the rule of law in Israel and Palestine. We produced, by the way, a booklet on that with the summary of the transcripts of the different talks by some very amazing speakers. So please do get in touch if you would like a copy of that. And issued a statement calling for recognition of the state of Palestine and a ban on import of settlement products. We will keep calling for this as the Balfour Project.
Very good.
So that was just a little comment from Vincent, who is watching.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the efforts everyone is doing in order to, to really prevent and stop and holding settlers accountable by making them pay the price of being settlers, and by not buying their produce and even not allowing their produce to enter the markets in UK and in different countries.
I've got a question from Ron Mendel. He asks, how are Palestinians defending their farms, their produce and their livestock from systematic restrictions imposed by the Israeli government, but also settler violence?
It is not easy. And here I want to be frank. It's not easy. The daily attacks against Palestinian farmers by settlers on daily basis, violations, injuring them, destroying their projects. And, the financial capacity of our Palestinian farmers is, very small. They can't hold all this. Of course, we as a union work hard to pressure our government to respond immediately to these farmers' need in order to bring them back to track of production rather than shifting them to be relief recipients. And we as a union, we try to provide support of resilience for farmers immediately when they have, their projects being destroyed or demolished or whatever by the Israeli side. Of course, we don't have that big financial capacity, but at least we can provide the minimum. And we recruit other resources from donors and agencies, from supporters who can do something to support the minimum requirement of farmers in the Jordan Valley in order to support their resilience to stay in their farmland. This doesn't mean that we succeeded to provide all what is needed, because there are many farmers, unfortunately, who were forced to leave, and they left their farmland, and they became workers, unfortunately, working inside Israel because they lost their source of income due to these ongoing, violations and ongoing destruction, ongoing, demolishings of their projects. So yes, there are many people, unfortunately, who could not, hold. But despite that, farmers in the Jordan Valley and in Area C are still resisting. I know they are paying from their blood to stay in their land, but they feel and they believe, and we are with them in this belief, that they are paying a holy price for a holy issue, and they will continue to resist there. And this is the only option left for them, is to resist and defend their lives and their existence in their own properties in the Area C. There are challenges, yes, they are paying the price. On daily basis, they're paying the price, but there is no other alternative, no other option. except to continue, and they will continue there, and we are with them on daily basis. We are there. That's why we prepare this presentation and tell the whole world what's happening to our farmers there, because these farmers, very important for them to feel that they are not abandoned, that there are people in this world who care about their situation. And how these people in this world would know, like the efforts you are doing, Diana, in these webinars, and the talk we are doing here, and those people who are caring to listen, to understand the situation and the context. And I'm sure those who are listening to us now will not stop after they knew that the piece of information. For sure, they either will share this information with others, they may do something, they may resist against something, they may do even if it is a small action, but small things, believe me, can make big differences. And for people, our people there, at least when they know that there are people who care about them, living in UK or in European countries, but still they care about what they are suffering, this will give them like an incentive of continue being daring and resist. Despite all these difficulties and catastrophic situation, our farmers are still their farmers with all the challenges and the prices they are paying. And believe me, we will continue to be there.
Well, please.
That land belongs to us, and we will continue to be there.
I think I speak for most of us attending that please do pass on the message that we are thinking about them and we do care. We actually have a lot of people who are attending who have been to the region, as you've seen from some of the comments and questions. So we've got a question from Amelia Mills. Having been to the Jordan Valley, Bardala village, on a community center construction with internationals, and she helped with the olive harvesting near Nablus a couple of years ago. She witnessed the reality that the farmers face out there. If the farmers cannot access their own land, is the soil being depleted, and how can fertility be improved?
You know, usually in these vulnerable areas, and most of these areas under threat in Area C, very close to settlements, or in the apartheid wall area, isolated by the apartheid wall, usually, for example, harvesting of an olive season happening with large number of people going together, and even with solidarity groups and international, people interested to help Palestinians, collect and harvest their produce during the olive sector. And this really can provide a level of protection for Palestinians when they are accompanied with foreigners, let's say, or internationals or whatever. And this happened many times. Every year, we have a campaign called "You Are Not Alone," which is for our olive, farmers of our olive sector, implemented not only by the union and other organizations in Palestine who recruit volunteers in large numbers to go and help Palestinian families to harvest their produce during the olive season, and who also have these lands very close to settlements, and they might be under the risk of being attacked by settlers. Despite that, many attacks happened even during this large presence of internationals and volunteers helping Palestinian families. Some were injured, by the way. But as I told you, farmers are there and they are connected to their land. Their souls are there and they will continue to be there. Despite of the price they are paying. I mean, yeah, they will continue. They have no other alternative but to live in their own land. Either, as one of them said, either we live above the land or inside the land. I mean, either we are buried in this land as killed due to violations or attacks, or we live in dignity above this land. This is our land. We're not going to leave.
Thank you for that. It's all just very difficult to hear and very it's heartbreaking, isn't it? We had a couple of questions. For example, the one from Ali Nazal. What do the Palestinian side, the PA and civil society do to help the farmers in terms of being resilient?
Yeah, from the introduction you made, Diana, you mentioned that we as a union, we work on policies that are better responsive to farmers' rights and farmers' needs. And here we believe that our national government has a responsibility to do something to support the resilience of people there through adopting policies that respond effectively to support the resilience of farmers in Palestine, actually, and to maintain food security in general. And based on that, we, for example, we suggest new policies. We pressure the government to activate policies, and we canceled policies we feel they are harming the agricultural sector. For that purpose, we have ongoing pressure, ongoing campaigning and lobby activities against our government in order to channelize the resources available in the government to be targeted to the most vulnerable area, most needy families, and most targeted communities due to occupation and the settlers. For an example of which, for example, last October in 2021, we conducted a big conference, advocacy conference, how to encourage agricultural investments in Area C. And in that conference, we identified the policy interventions required from the government, what they need to do, practical actions and practical steps in order to support farmers to stay in their farms, how we can change the Jordan Valley to be an attractive area for investments, like rather than being, an ignored area and no one would like to be there because of violations. And second, we identified also the interventions required from the international community as well and donors, because they also have a responsibility of doing something for that area. I may share that the outcomes of that conference with you as well. And from there, you can see what farmers are expecting from the international community, what kind of actions we are talking about. For example, Diana, you can imagine there are projects in Jordan Valley that were funded by the European Commission, like water tanks, for example, systems. In Jordan Valley, believe me, the Israeli army and the settlers demolished that water tank in the presence of the donor himself. And when he tried to say that this system was built by our money, they silenced him and they destroyed that water tank. I mean, there's a big question to Europeans, taxpayers who pay from their own money to the government, and then the government, they donate and support projects in Palestine. What is needed and required is to protect these projects from being demolished. And they can impose pressure on Israel. Of course they can, to protect these projects. And there are lots of interests between Israel and European countries, as and UK. Economic, cooperation, 65% of Israeli economy is dependent on European countries, not on Americans. There are lots of things you can do. There are lots of pressure, these countries can do in order to stop Israel as an occupying power from continuing this occupation and giving encouragement for the expansion of settlers and settlements in that area.
Well, that would be super useful to have that that list of points for the international community would be fantastic, because it might answer some of the questions that we've had. For example, from Martina White, what are the actions that are needed to be taken by the UN, by the UK, by individuals, and how effective do you think they'll be? And then similarly from Graham Ogden, we've got, apart from obviously lobbying our government to hold Israel in account, what are the practical ways that we can support those in farming? For example, is it helpful to fund planting of olive trees, etc.?
Next week, BFU, our union, will launch a huge global campaign under the title "Plant an Olive Tree for Yourself in Palestine." And I will share with you the link, Diana, so you can disseminate largely. And by doing this, we want to achieve two goals, to be honest. One, to encourage people to donate by even planting one olive tree or one tree, whatever, in Palestine. And second, by planting a tree means that we are protecting a small piece of land from being confiscated. This is a small action that can be done on individual basis, not that big issue. I hope, many people who are now following us or joining this webinar or other webinars to join that campaign and donate. $10, $15 to plant a tree here or a tree there. Small things make big differences, believe me. And we're trying to connect as many friends to the earth of Palestine as possible from this whole world. Even we're starting with small things, and we connect people with the land here by seeing the tree they donated to plant in that area. which will end up by protecting the land from being confiscated and also generating income for a family to live with from the revenue that they will get in a few years from the olive harvest. And a second, what an international community can do, of course, they can intensify their support and giving the Area C as top priority for funding, for more programs, focusing on infrastructure programs, not only trainings and workshops, you know, and the trainings here and there, but also infrastructure projects that enable people, farmers, to get access to land. For example, agricultural roads, rehabilitation of agricultural roads, transitional pipelines, irrigation networks, fertilizers. And second, you can help us open the market for our produce in Palestine to encourage farmers to produce more. If market is secured for Palestinian agricultural produce, then Palestinians can expand their land and cultivate more. By cultivating more, we're protecting more land. So opening the market, increasing the projects and the programs and the support for Palestinians in that area, protecting the projects funded by your countries, by your tax money is very important and a priority that will keep the projects up and running rather than to be destroyed and then EU would come again, re-establish, and then the occupation will destroy again. I mean, Diana, can you imagine the occupation is destroying and paying nothing for the things they destroyed? Others would come and fix what they have destroyed. This is really absurd. They should pay the price. They should count to 10 before they destroy a project. How they can do so? By the pressure and by firm pressure from the countries who donate for projects in Palestine, getting their money coming from the taxpayers in their country, and they can do so. There are lots of things. They have a big harsh stick to use against the occupation to pressure them not to destroy any project they are funding in that area. Otherwise, I mean, we will get to a point where no donor will be ready to take any risk and provide any support to that area, which means leaving the space as wide as enough for the occupation and settlements to expand on the account of Palestinian lands. So there is a responsibility for international community. And third, imposing pressure even on settlers from entering your countries, because they are settlers. They are criminals and they should be dealt with as criminals. Why to allow the criminals to enter your countries freely? Why? They are committing international crimes against humanity. It's really legal to prevent them from entering. This will make them on an individual basis feel that they are paying a price. And then they may think, and believe me, this will tame Israel, tame them. As you know, that novella, Taming of the Shrew, this will tame Israel from giving incentives to expand settlements in Area C.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love the sound of the planting a tree campaign. So we will for sure share that. That will be put on the website, on the page with the recordings and so forth. I've got one question from Nina Zumaya, who's a fellow Palestinian, and she works with St. John a lot, so a big fan. Do you think if we stopped selling if Israel stopped selling their food underneath their name or, as settlement products, do you think they might start marketing themselves as Palestinian products?
Settlement product being marketed as, that's not easy. I know some cases happened here and there, Diana, and maybe you are aware of that, like what happened with the dates, but believe me, we were there and we managed to stop that things from happening. But this happened on a very small scale issue, and that was easily captured by us. And believe me, we in the union, for example, we are working on anti-dumping policies. I mean, anti-dumping policies that regulate in national markets from dumping coming from settlements or from Israel. And we managed to pressure the government, namely the Ministry of Agriculture, to open its wides largely on any produce coming to the local markets coming from settlements. But, preventing the produce of settlements from being marketed outside it will be a big punishment against settlers. And that will make them dump their produce inside their country there. And this will not be easy, believe me, because dumping would make the prices to go lower and lower than the cost. And by doing this, this is a price they are paying of being settlers. Yes, preventing their produce from entering the market is very important. Preventing settlers themselves from entering European countries, it's also another third, pressuring your countries to recognize Palestine as a state under occupation is very important. This will be a very good response against the occupation policies inside this area. Intensifying support for Palestinians is very important. Protecting the projects you are donating and funding is very important. There are lots of things you can do. And stopping any economic cooperation between companies in your countries who cooperate with companies working in settlements is very important. There are lots of things you can do. Believe me, lots of things. There is a list of, a long list of policy asks that can be worked on in your countries, and you can pressure your governments doing so. And this is not only for because we are Palestinians. We don't have blue eyes like Ukrainians, but it's because we are human beings, and you care about humanity all over the world, wherever it is. You care, your principles, your values, your constitution is pro those who are persecuted. And if you know those who are persecuted, you are responsible to do an action. What kind of action you can decide? There are a list of things, and you can start with the thing you can do on your individual level, and then as a group you can do something bigger, and you can pressure more, even the governments, parliamentarians, and so on, and then Israel will feel that they are held accountable.
Thank you so much for that. As you know, one of the pillars of the Balfour Project is to lobby the UK government to recognize Palestine, the state of Palestine, alongside the state of Israel. So that is for sure something that we are regularly working on and campaigning and getting our supporters involved in. So I have one last question that I'm going to end on, because we've hit the hour mark already, and I'm really sorry we haven't got through all the questions, but we had so many. I will, like I said, be sharing the chat box with Abbas, so he will see everything, but I've tried to get through as many as possible. For those of you who've been coming along to our webinars, you know that we hold them for free, and that we are very open to donations. So I'm posting the link for supporting the Balfour Project in the chat box now. If you can spare a pack of cigarettes or the cost of a coffee, then we would greatly appreciate it. We also have a new friendship program, so you can become a friend of the Balfour Project. If you sign up to regular giving, that any amount, monthly or annually, whichever way you prefer to give, then you become automatically a friend of the Balfour Project, which has a few benefits, such as some preview tickets for some of our events, and some exclusive events that we'll be having specifically for our friends, online events, I should say, on the most part. We've had a little bit of teething problems with the actual friends page. Some of you will know. So if you just go to the regular giving, the direct debit section of the normal donation page, you can sign up there to any amount, monthly or annual. So I'm posting that right now in the chat box. And now I'm going to end on our final question, Abbas, because we could chat for forever. I mean, it's been so interesting, and it's been, well, I'll read the question from Fahad Abu Akil, who I gather is in the States. He says, thank you for a great presentation. That thought has been echoed by many people in the chat box. He says, 99% of what you said, we in the USA do not know. The real question is, can the Palestinians continue to survive for the next 25 to 50 years, suffering under the brutal Israeli occupation?
I hope we won't see the occupation in the coming 25 or 50 years, but believe me, Palestinians have been here since Abraham time and before, and they will continue to be here until the day of reckoning. This is our land. We will resist, we will defend, and we will continue to be here, believe me. And with your support, you will make our resistance easier and our resistance meaningful. And the more solidarity we're having from people around this world, the shorter the life of occupation will be on this land. So your support is very important, but we were born here, we will continue to be here, we will die here, and our land will keep there. There are different occupations that have passed away on this land. The land is still there, Palestinians are still there. And believe me, that day will come when we will live without occupation, regardless of the price we will be paying. As one time, and this I will end up by telling this story. In 1998, during transitional period of Oslo Agreement, 5 years from 1994 until 1999, the Norwegians, because Oslo Agreement was sponsored by Norwegians, they launched a program called FAFO program, people-to-people dialogue. At that time, I was one of those who were facilitating the dialogue between, academics, history teachers from both sides, trying to allow Israeli historians to understand the Palestinian narration of the conflict. And one of them said, from the Israeli history teacher, he said that Palestinians have never lost an opportunity to lose an opportunity. In 1948, there was partition of Palestine, and 242 and so on. And then I told him, and I want to repeat this answer to my friend from US, he's a Palestinian, and I know he will understand me, and all those who are participating in this webinar. We were lucky that we had many opportunities, but believe me, that day will come. We are paying the price for something holy. And we Palestinians feel that we will continue to pay the price for that one. The question, you are occupying a land that doesn't belong to you, and you are paying a price for this. Do you think the price you are paying is worthy for something you don't own and doesn't belong to you? When that day come and you will leave, because there is no occupation in this history that lasted forever. Romanians, who? Ottomani? Nothing. They all, ended. And this occupation will end. By that time, we will be, singing about the prices we paid, because we paid for our holy land. The question will be for you, for the Israeli side, what that price was paid for. Was it meaningful to you? It's not meaningful. You say, in their language, they say, shtachim. Shtachim means occupied territories. And you say it's occupied territories while you are still there. The occupation will end, believe me, my friend. Palestinians will remain there. Our farmers are strong enough to stay. Our union are supporting the resilience and the resistance of our farmers there. And there are people like you who care, and they will continue to support. And inshallah, together, we make the life of this occupation shorter than what they expect.
I think our revenge will be the laughter of our children, right? I, on that note, would like to thank you so much, Abbas. That was absolutely, it was fascinating and depressing, as most of our webinars are. Apologies. Thank you, everyone who's come along today, and thank you for all the fascinating questions. They were amazing. Like I said, I will pass on the chat to Abbas, so he will see all your comments. They're coming in now, all the thank yous for such an amazing presentation. So he will see all of those. So thank you again for those comments.
Thank you all.
And yes, thank you again, Abbas.
Thank you, Diana, for organizing this webinar. Thanks for everyone who joined and participated. Thanks for everyone who is caring, and thanks for everyone who will take all these information and disseminate largely and widely. Thanks for everyone who will take an action, even if it is a small action, but it's still an action. Thanks a lot for all of you.
Thank you, and have a lovely evening, everyone. Bye.